Here too.
Yeah.
Hi, Ms Ebert's class. This is your recording for Tuesday, the 27th. Chapter 14, Sammy. It was a horrible, stinky, rainy day. Some rainy days are fun and exciting, but not this one. This one stunk. All the children were wet and wore smelly raincoats. The whole room smelled awful. "Ooh, it stinks in here," said Mauricia. Everybody laughed, but she was right. There was one good thing, however. There was a new boy in class. New kids are always fun, except no one could even tell what the new boy looked like. He was completely covered by his raincoat. "Class," said Miss Jules, "I'd like you all to meet Sammy. Let us show him what a nice class we can be." Leslie walked up and smiled at Sammy, but her smile quickly turned into a frown. "You smell terrible," she said. "Leslie," exclaimed Miss Jules, "that's no way to greet a new member of the class." Miss Jules wrote Leslie's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. "But he does, Miss Jules," said Leslie. "He smells awful." "You're ugly," Sammy replied. "Now, Sammy, that's no way to talk," said Miss Jules. "Leslie is a very pretty girl." "She's ugly," said Sammy. Allison spoke up. "Well, you smell terrible and are probably even uglier, but nobody can see you because you're hiding under that smelly old raincoat." "That'll be enough of that," said Miss Jules. "Now, Sammy, why don't you take off your coat and hang it in the closet? Let us all see how nice you look." "I don't want to, you old windbag," said Sammy. "That's because he's so ugly," said Leslie. "I'm sure he's quite handsome," said Miss Jules. "He's just shy. Here, let me help you." Miss Jules took off Sammy's coat for him, but underneath was still another raincoat, even dirtier and smellier than the first one. They still couldn't see his face. "Ooh, now he smells even worse," said Mauricia. "You don't exactly smell like a rose either," Sammy replied. Miss Jules took off his second raincoat, but there was still another one under that, and the smell became so bad that Miss Jules had to run and stick her head out the window to get some fresh air. "You're all a bunch of pigs," Sammy screeched. "Dirty, rotten pigs." The smell was overpowering. Sammy just stood there, hidden under his raincoats. Miss Jewel wrote Sammy's name under the word discipline. "Send him home on the kindergarten bus," said Joey. "Not with me," said Todd. Miss Jules held her nose, walking up to Sammy and removing his raincoat. She threw it out the window, but he still had another one on. Sammy hissed, "Hey, you old windbag! Watch where you throw my good clothes." Miss Jules put a check mark next to Sammy's name on the blackboard. Then she took off another raincoat and threw it out the window. The smell got worse, for he had on still another one. Sammy began to laugh. His horrible laugh was even worse than his horrible voice. When Sammy first came in the room, he was 4 feet taller, but after Miss Jules removed 6 of his raincoat, he was only 3 feet tall, and there were still more raincoats to go. Miss Jules circled his name and removed another raincoat. She threw it out the window. Then she put a triangle around the circle and threw another of his coats outside. She kept doing this until Sammy was only 1.5 feet tall. With every coat she took off, Sammy's laugh got louder and the smell got worse. Some of the children held their ears. Others could hold only one ear because they were holding their nose with the other hand. It was hard to say which was worse, the laugh or the smell. Sammy stopped laughing and said, "Hey, old windbag, if you take off one more of my coats and throw it out the window, I'll bite your head off." "They smell too bad for me to allow them in the classroom," said Miss Jules. "You can pick them up when you leave." "They smell better than you do, pighead," Sammy shouted. Miss Jules didn't stop. She took off another one of his coats, then another, then another. Sammy was only 4 inches tall, 3 inches tall, 2 inches tall, At last she removed the final coat. All that was there was a dead rat. "Well, I don't allow dead rats in my classroom," she said. She picked it up by the tail, put it in a plastic bag, and threw it away. Miss Jules didn't allow dead rats in her class. Todd once brought a dead rat for show and tell, and Miss Jules made him throw that one away too. "I'm glad Sammy isn't allowed in our classroom," said Rondi. "I don't like him very much." "Yes," said Miss Jules. "We caught another one." Dead rats were always trying to sneak into Miss Jules' class. That was the third one she'd caught since September. Chapter 15, Dee Dee. This story contains a problem and a solution. Dee Dee was a mousy-looking kid. Unlike most children at Wayside School, she liked recess better than spelling. As soon as the recess bell rang, she would jump up from her seat and run out the door. There were big signs in Wayside School on every floor. "No jumping down the stairs." Dee Dee never seemed to notice the sign. She jumped down the stairs. Some children took the stairs 2 at a time. Dee Dee took them 10 at a time. That was on the way down. It was funny. She never seemed to be in quite the same hurry on the way back up. There's another sign at Wayside School. "No cutting across the grass." Dee Dee must not have seen that one either. She cut across the grass and ran up to Louis, the art teacher. "I want a green ball," Dee Dee said. The green balls were the best. "I'm all out of green balls," said Louis. "Okay, then I want a red ball," said Dee Dee. The red balls were just about as good as the green balls. They didn't bounce as high, but actually sometimes you don't want a ball to bounce too high. "I'm all out of red balls too," said Louis. "Do you have anything left?" asked Dee Dee. Dee Dee meant anything besides the yellow ball. There was one yellow ball at Wayside School, and Louis was always trying to get rid of it. It didn't bounce, and it never went the way it was kicked. "Anything at all?" asked Dee Dee. "Today is your lucky day," said Louis. "I have one ball left, just for you, the one and only yellow ball." "No, thanks." Come on, take it," said Louis. "Why don't you ever have green or red balls?" asked Dee Dee. "I do, but the other children ask first. By the time you get here, they're all gone." "But that's because I have to come all the way from the 30th story. How do you expect me to compete with kids from the 1st or 2nd? "That's why I saved you the yellow ball," said Louis. "Everybody wanted it, but I saved it just for you." "I bet," said Dee Dee. She took the yellow ball and bounced it on the ground. It stopped dead with a thud. She stepped back, ran up, and kicked it. It went backwards over her head. She didn't bother chasing it. Instead, she played hopscotch with Jenny and Leslie. She thought it was disgusting. The next day, Dee Dee asked Miss Jules if she could go to recess early. "Why?" asked Miss Jules. "So I can get a green ball before Luce gives them all away." "I'm glad you have a good reason. Yes, you may go, but first, spell Mississippi for me." Spelling was not Dee Dee's best subject. By the time she finally got it right, she was 5 minutes late for recess. She jumped down the stairs, cut across the grass, and ran up to Louis. There were no green balls left. There were no red balls left either. However, there was still the yellow ball. Dee Dee played jump rope with Joy and Mauricia. It was no better than hopscotch. So Dee Dee's problem was to figure out a way to get a green ball, or at least a red ball. You already know that this story also contains a solution. Dee Dee figured it out. See if you can too. Remember everything you know about Dee Dee, Wayside School, and Miss Jules. Hint: the next day, Dee Dee brought a cream cheese and jelly sandwich, some nuts, and shredded cheese in her lunchbox. Here's what happened. Just before recess, Dee Dee smeared the cream cheese and jelly all over her face. Then she stuffed her mouth with nuts and hugged the shredded cheese from her nose. When she closed her eyes, she looked just like a dead rat. Todd was in on the plan. Miss Jules, he called, there's a dead rat in the classroom. I want that dead rat out now. Immediately. When Miss Jules said immediately, she meant it. Dee Dee instantly found herself outside on the playground. I want a green ball, she said. Louis pretended he hadn't heard her. May I please have a green ball? Asked Dee Dee. Louis gave her a green ball. I don't know how you did it, Dee Dee, but you're the first today, he said. When Mrs. Jules found out that Dee Dee and Todd had tricked her, she sent Todd home early on the kindergarten bus. Dee Dee threw the green ball on the ground. It bounced 50 feet straight up in the air, and then she caught it. You don't like me, do you? She asked. Sure I do. No, you don't, said Dee Dee. Yes, I like you, said Louis. No, you don't, Dee Dee insisted. Yes, I like you, I really do, said Louis. Are you sure? Asked Dee Dee. Yes. Don't you believe me? I guess so, said Dee Dee. Do you like me? You bet, said Dee Dee. You're my best friend. Terrific, said Louis. I always wanted to be best friends with a dead rat. Chapter 16, DJ. DJ skipped up the 30 flights of stairs to Miss Jules' room. He was grinning from ear to ear, from nose to chin, from here to there, and back again. Hey, DJ, glad to see you, said Todd. Todd was a pushover for smiling faces. Miss Jules heard him. She began to write Todd's name on the board under discipline, but when she saw DJ smile, she put down the chalk. Good morning, DJ, she said. What are you so happy about? DJ grinned and shrugged his shoulders. Miss Jules smiled. Damien looked at the smile on Miss Jules' face, then at Todd's, and finally at DJ's. Then Damien smiled. His smile was almost as big as DJ's. They were best friends. Once they saw the two of them smiling, the rest of the class couldn't help but smile. Rondi had a very cute one, due to her two missing front teeth. Nobody had an ugly smile. Jason came to school late. He was very upset, but the first thing he saw was Damien's smile, and he felt a little better. Then he saw Rondi's toothless grin, and he even began to smile a little himself. But when he saw the piano on DJ's face, he fell, laughing, onto the floor. Everybody started to laugh, even Kathy, and she hardly ever laughed except when somebody hurt themselves. The whole room seemed to be laughing. Not just the people in it. The blackboard chuckled, the ceiling snickered, the desks were jumping up and down, and the chairs were slapping one another on the back. The floor was very ticklish. It laughed until the walls turned purple. The wastebasket started to sing, and all the pencils stood up and danced. Finally, things began to settle down. Mrs. Jules wiped her eyes and said, DJ, why don't you tell the class why you're so happy? At least let us know what we're laughing at. But DJ just kept smiling. Oh, come on, DJ, said Dee Dee, tell us. DJ didn't say a word. He couldn't. His mouth was stretched out of shape. Let me guess, said Ron. If we guess right, will you tell us? DJ nodded his head. His smile began to hurt his ears. Everyone took a guess. Have you been swimming? Is it your birthday? Are you in love? Did you get a green ball? Nobody guessed right. At recess, DJ was still smiling. Louis, the art teacher, called, Hey, DJ, come here. They walked to the far corner of the playground, where they were alone. What's up, DJ? Louis asked. DJ just smiled. Come on, DJ, you can tell me. Why are you so happy? DJ looked up at him. He said, You need a reason to be sad. You don't need a reason to be happy. Chapter 17, John. John had light brown hair and a round head. He was Joe's best friend. John was one of the smartest boys in Miss Jules' class. But he had one problem. He could only read words written upside down. Nobody ever wrote anything upside down. But it was only a little problem. John was still in the high reading group. He just turned the book upside down. It was easier for John to turn a book upside down than to learn to read correctly. But the easiest way isn't always the best. Miss Jules said, "John, you can't go on reading like this. You can't spend the rest of your life turning your books upside down." "Why not?" asked John. "Because I said so," said Miss Jules. "Besides, what happens when I write something on the blackboard? You can't turn the blackboard upside down." "No, I guess you're right," said John. "I know I'm right," said Miss Jules. "You're going to have to learn to stand on your head." John couldn't stand on his head. He had given up trying. You would have too if you'd fallen over as many times as he had. Joe was John's best friend. He could stand on John's head. Every time John fell over, Joe stood on his head. After all, what are best friends for? "My head is too round, Miss Jules. I can't stand on it," said John. "Of course you can, John. If Joe can stand on your head, so can you." "It's easy, John," said Joe. "I can't," John repeated. "I always fall over." "Nonsense," said Miss Jules. "All you have to do is find your center of balance. Now, up you go." John put his round head on the floor and swung his legs up. He fell right over. Then Joe stood on John's head. "See, John, it's easy. Nothing to it," said Joe. "We'll help you, John," said Miss Jules. "Joe, get off John's head and get me a pillow from under my desk. Nancy, Calvin, come here and give us a hand." Miss Jules took the pillow from John, set it on the floor. "All right, John, we'll surround you," she said. "We won't let you fall." John put his head on the pillow and swung his legs up. He started to fall one way, but Nancy pushed him back up. Then he started to fall another way, but Calvin straightened him out. John kept falling a little, but this way and that way, until at last he found his center of balance. "Hey, look at me," said John. "I'm up. I'm really up. I'm standing on my head. I found my center of balance. It's beautiful. I can read the blackboard. Hey, Calvin, bring me a book. You don't have to turn it upside down." Ha ha, hey, who, ah. Bam. While Calvin went to get his book, John fell flat on his face. "You better stay off my head, Joe," he warned. "Are you all right, John?" asked Miss Jules. "Yes, I think so. I feel a little funny. Hey, I can still read the blackboard, and I'm not upside down. I can read right side up now. When I fell, I must have flipped my brain or something." "That's wonderful, John," said Miss Jules. "Here, put the pillow back under my desk. As a reward, you may have a Tootsie Roll Pop. They're in the coffee can on top of my desk." John placed the pillow on top of her desk, then looked under the desk, but he couldn't find the Tootsie Roll Pops anywhere. Chapter 18. Leslie. Leslie had 5 fingers on each hand and 5 toes on each foot. For each hand she had an arm, and for each foot she had a leg. She was a very lucky girl. She had 2 lovely long pigtails that reached all the way down to her waist. When Miss Jewel asked a question, Leslie could raise one of her hands. When Leslie was adding, she could count on her fingers. When Paul pulled one of her pigtails, she could kick him with one foot that was while standing on the other. But Leslie had one problem. She didn't know what to do with her toes. She had 10 adorable little toes and nothing to do with them. As far as she can tell, they served no purpose. "Suck your toes, that's what I do," said Sherry. But Leslie's foot wouldn't reach her mouth. "Well, that's all toes are good for," said Sherry. She put her foot in her mouth and went to sleep. No, thought Leslie. They must be good for something. They just have to be. During recess, she asked Dana, "Dana, what do you do with your toes?" "I scratch the back of my leg," said Dana. "First I scratch my left leg with my right foot, Then I scratch my right leg with my left foot. But my legs don't itch, said Leslie. That's good, said Dana. In that case, you can scratch my legs. With your help, I can scratch both legs at the same time. No, never mind, said Leslie. She walked up behind Louis, the art teacher, hopping on his shoulders. Louis, she said, I don't know what to do with my toes. Louis tugged her foot. Yes, that is a serious problem, he said, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take them off your hands for you, or rather, your feet. Just cut 'em off and give 'em to me. What? Said Leslie. You don't want 'em, so I'll take 'em, said Louis. You won't have to worry about them ever again. No, said Leslie. I'll give 'em to Miss Mush, said Louis. She can make little hot dogs out of them. Miss Mush was the lunch teacher. No, I'm not going to give my toes away, said Leslie. All right, said Louis. I'll give you a nickel apiece for them. No, you can't have them, said Leslie. Why not, said Louis. They're no good to you. And think of all you can buy for 50 cents. The bell rang. I'll think it over, said Leslie. She ran back to class. Miss Jules, said Leslie, I don't see any reason for keeping my toes. Oh, Leslie, I'm sure there's lots of good reasons, said Miss Jules. Well, I can't think of any. My legs don't itch, and I can't get my foot to my mouth. Louis offered me a nickel apiece, and it seems like a good idea. But I wanted to check with you first. I think Louis is pulling your legs, said Miss Jules. No, said Leslie, he was pulling my toes. What would he want to do with your toes? Asked Miss Jules. I don't know, said Leslie, but if he's willing to give me 5 cents apiece for them, then I'm going to take him up on it. That's 50 cents. At lunch, Leslie walked up to Louis. Okay, Louis, you can have my toes for a nickel apiece. That'll be 50 cents. Not so fast, said Louis. Let me look at them. Leslie took off her shoes. Yes, yes, said Louis. The big ones are good, and the ones next to them. But the most I give you for the rest of your toes is 3 cents each. 3 cents? You told me 5 at recess. I'll give you 5 cents for the big ones, but just look at that scrawny little runt of a toe at the end there. You're lucky to be even getting 3 cents for it. I think you're getting a darn good deal. I happen to like my toes, said Leslie. Fine then, said Louis, keep them. I'll just take the 2 big toes and we'll call it square. He reached in his pocket and came out with a dime. Nothing doing, said Leslie. These toes are sold as a set. You see, they're all 10 for 50 cents or no deal. What am I going to do with just 8 toes? Then forget it, said Louis. I'm not going to give you a nickel for those scrawny little end toes. Fine, said Leslie, no deal. My toes will still be here if you change your mind. She turned and walked towards the hopscotch area. Wait a second, Louis said. I'll give you $1 for each of your pigtails. Leslie turned around and looked at him with fiery eyes. Cut my hair? She exclaimed. Are you crazy? Chapter 19. Ms Zavaris. There is no Miss Zavaris. There is no 19th story. Sorry. Chapter 20. Kathy. Kathy doesn't like you. She doesn't know you, but she still doesn't like you. She thinks you're stupid. In fact, she thinks you're the stupidest person she doesn't know. What do you think of that? She also thinks you're ugly. As a matter of fact, she thinks you're the ugliest person she doesn't know. And she doesn't know a lot of people. She doesn't like the people she knows either. She hates everybody in Miss Jules' class. She did like one member of the class. She liked Sammy. She thought he was funny. Sammy was a dead rat. But Kathy has good reasons for not liking any of the children she knows. She doesn't like DJ because he smiles too much. And she doesn't like John because he can't stand on his head. She once had a cat named Skunks. She liked skunks, but she was afraid that Skunks would run away. You have nothing to worry about, Kathy, said Miss Jules. Skunks won't run away. Just be nice to him and feed him and pet him, and he won't run away. You may go out and play. He may go out and play, but he'll always come back. No, you're wrong, Miss Jules, said Kathy. What do you know? He'll run away. So Kathy kept Skunks locked up in her closet at home. She never let him out, and sometimes even forgot to feed him. One day, while Kathy was looking for her other shoe, Skunks ran out of the closet and never came back. You said he would come back, Miss Jules, said Kathy. He never came back. You were wrong. I was right. And that's why Kathy didn't like Miss Jules. The next time I get a cat, I'll kill him. Then he'll never run away, said Kathy. Then there was the time that Damien tried to teach Kathy how to play catch. Damien said, when I throw you the ball, Kathy, try to catch it. I can't catch it, said Kathy. I'll just get hurt. No, you won't get hurt, Damien says. Just watch the ball. He tossed it to her, but Kathy knew she would get hurt, so she closed her eyes and the ball hit her in the cheek. It hurt. Kathy began to cry. You were wrong, she sobbed. I was right. And that is why Kathy didn't like Damien. Allison believed that you are nice to somebody, then they'll be nice to you. So one day she brought Kathy a cookie. I don't want your ugly cookie, Kathy said. It probably tastes terrible. Allison said, no, it's very good. I made it myself. Kathy said, well, if you made it, then it must stink. You can't cook. You're too stupid. She just put the cookie in the desk along with her pencils, crayons, and books. 3 weeks later, Kathy was hungry. All right, Allison, I'll try your stupid cookie. She took it out of her desk. It was covered in dust. She bit into it. It was hard and tasted terrible. See, said Kathy, I was right. That's why Kathy didn't like Allison. Yes, Kathy had very good reasons for not liking anybody she knew. But she also had a good reason for not liking you. And she doesn't even know you. Her reason is this. She knows that if you ever met her, you wouldn't like her. You don't like Kathy, do you? See? She was right. It's funny how a person can be right all the time and still be wrong. Okay, that is enough for today, and I should see you in class tomorrow, I hope.